Welcome to this interview. I'm Megan Gibson, your conference co-host. Today, I'm speaking with Dr. Shainna Ali, a licensed mental health counselor and mental health advocate with a strength-based approach. She's also a published author with several books on self-love targeted to kids and teens, as well as the host of the Mental Wellness Podcast. Dr. Shainna Ali, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to talk about such an important topic.
So we're talking about healing toxic relationships today. So I would love it if you could start by telling me a little bit about your background and how you got into the work of helping people with their self-image and self-love and healing toxic relationship patterns.
Absolutely. So today, in our present moment, I identify as a mental health counselor, educator, and advocate. And had you asked me decades ago what I'm doing in the future, I think the odds would be 0% that I would possibly say that. And it's because I didn't know a lot about mental health, specifically mental wellness, and a lot of the topics that we're going to talk about today. Or even if I was living through them, I didn't realize how much of an impact it was having on my life. And it wasn't until I was in college and I started to realize that I was struggling with my own mental health. And to kind of summarize that quickly, in seeking help, I realized I actually have been living with anxiety my whole life. And a lot of that was impacted by my self love, my self image, my lack of boundaries, all these things that I'm really passionate about sharing with others today. When I realized that mental health mattered and my mental health was struggling, it was really obvious to start working on my own mental health. But it also made me really curious about others. Was this something that I was only struggling with? And how did I miss this? How did I miss this mark? How did I miss the signs? Um, and I realized it was because it wasn't spoken about, it wasn't talked about. And I had a very stigmatized view of mental health that was offered to me. And I didn't fit that paradigm. And so I was like, oh, good, something can't be wrong. And boy, that was misleading. And all of the time that passed that I could have been helped and I could have developed in a different way. So the rest is kind of history from there. I realized that I wasn't the only one. And unfortunately, there are many, many more people with similar journeys. And that's how I became interested in mental health. And when I was in the mental health realm and working as a counselor, realized that people are so different. I knew that a little bit before, but man, that really opened my eyes more. People are so different in so many ways. Yet there were some consistent things about mental health that when I was working with person after person, or even outside of my work, when I was noticing friends and loved ones, that everyone had as consistent and everyone else seemed to be struggling with some level of self-love too. And that essentially is what made me not just work on my own self-love journey, but realize that self-love is essential for everyone. That's where the self-love workbook came out of. And then from there, I realized that, oh, another thing that people struggle with, no matter who they are boundaries. And that stemmed from the self-love workbook. And that's where designing healthy boundaries came from. So that is a long story, as short as I can possibly make it.
That was very succinct. You did great. And I think it's something that so many people can relate to. And I want to also check in with people because we're talking about toxic relationships. And sometimes in talking about like self-love and boundaries and mental health, I never want to mislead people to think that only people with mental health issues or problems have issues with self-love or boundaries, right? Like everyone can use mental health support. You don't have to have some sort of diagnosable disorder in order to deserve, be worthy of, and need mental health support, right?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you're emphasizing that because it's a big part of my work, trying to help people understand the difference between mental illness, mental health, and mental wellness. So, really quickly to go over that, because I know a lot of people are probably working with those misconceptions. We think about mental health associated with mental illness, that diagnosable problem, perhaps multiple problems. And many times there's this really challenging image that gets conjured to mind. And it does, mental health can encompass that. Yet we all have mental health, just like we all have physical health, right? So just like we need sleep, hydration, proper nutrition, we also need certain components of mental health too. We need healthy actions that are aligned with who we are. We need healthy thoughts. We need to regulate our emotions. We need healthy relationships and not toxic ones, right? So those are just as essential. I know that's hard for people to believe that it's just as essential as food and water and sleep, but I promise you it is.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you made that distinction between, mental illness, mental health, and mental wellness.